Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Good to be back here. Let's see. Tonight, what are we going to... Well, first of all, I hope everybody had a good week. It's been kind of crazy. If you're catching this on the replay, love you. Do all the things for the algorithm. And my timestamps lately have been a lot behind, not even a little behind, but eventually I do try to get everything timestamped so you can just zoom to wherever you want to go in the show. Let's see. I've been sitting here making a little bit of a list to remind myself of all of the things that I want to mention. But first, I think, but mainly tonight, we're going to look at the Hegseth NATO press conference. We're going to go through that because that's one of those things that I know we like to go through together. So, first I'm going to roll the intro. Then we're going to start with a little bit of Heather Cox Richardson and the whoopsie doodle to end all whoopsie doodles, I think. Maybe not quite, but pushing it. And we'll do a quick zoom through my little list of notes. And then we will move on to that Hegseth press conference, and then we'll get on with our Sunday and get ready to carry on with the week. But first, let me find my intro. Run it. Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Tea, a show where we say all the things you wish the newscasters said, unscripted and unfiltered. We talk about news, politics, and entertainment, so pull up your soapbox, pour yourself a cuppa, and let's go. All right. Did I handwrite my notes? I did, because I am old school sometimes. And sitting here, I was like, okay, there was a list that I walked through with everybody, and let's see. Well, let's start. Let us start with some Heather Cox Richardson, and I highlighted it. Let's see if I can. Can I do the things that I need to do to make this work? Probably. You know, I do this live for a reason. No, that one. There we go. No, not that one. And Smolin. Yay! There we go. Okay. I highlighted this bit because amongst the things I wanted to mention was the fact that the firings have started to come down, which is never fun. But amongst the firings, I open up Heather Cox Richardson, and after seeing some of this on the other internet things, and let's see. It certainly appears that those in charge of the firings didn't know what they were doing. On Thursday, they fired more than 300 workers at the National Nuclear Security Administration, apparently not aware that they were the people who oversee the nation's nuclear weapons. Today, Peter Alexander and Alexandra Marquez of NBC News reported that officials are now trying to rehire them, but can't figure out how to reach them because the workers lost access to their work email when they were fired. This timeline has just gotten insane, like beyond insane. I was not prepared for idiocracy to be quite so much of, real life in these times. And I can't think of the Venn diagram that I'm remembering where it's like, you are here, and idiocracy is one, and there was a whole bunch of other dystopian things. Like, we just fired the people that look after our nuclear weapons, and seemingly the response was, whoopsie doodle, we should maybe undo that. Government efficiency. Yay! Because this is the least efficient way I have ever seen to handle that. And we could do a show on that. But I wanted to start there because wow. Wow. Every time I was like, we've reached peak and I don't have it on my bingo card. No, it gets worse. It gets worse. So what else did I have in my notes? Oh, along with that, somehow this administration doing the things this administration does has made Quebec proud to be part of Canada, which is something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And Vance managed to anger Scotland as well. I don't know. I don't know if you know or love any French Canadians or Scots in your life, but let me tell you, those are two groups not to piss off. They will win. They will win. It don't do it. And somehow we've done it. And let's see. Oh, and a whole bunch of federal prosecutors resigned because they didn't want to, not do brain buffering. A whole bunch of federal prosecutors resigned because the DOJ and evil legal Barbie said, hey, why don't you just drop the charges against Eric Adams, despite the fact that we have a lot of evidence and stuff like that. And the prosecutors were like, no. And they were like, well, you better do it, fall in line. And the prosecutors were like, we'll resign then, because that's not how the law works. So am I paraphrasing? Yes. Am I vastly oversimplifying? Mm-hmm. Because it's easier to hear it in the way I just said it. If you want to do deep dives are available. But yeah, so that happened. I mean, are we really surprised? Let's look at we currently have a president who has 34 felonies convictions. So, there's that. What else? I think that was the basics. Why did I am I going to keep it short tonight? I'm going to try cuz it's Sunday and we all want to just deal with this and then go on with our lives and have a nice little evening. But yeah, I looked at trying to do Hegseth and Vance for tonight. But here's the problem I have with Vance. He is, well, like Howdy Doody became a real boy. And I can't watch him for that long. And everything he said, it was like, it would take us so long to go through it because of the amount of fact checking that just needs to be done with him because open mouth and the opposite of the truth just spills out of his face. And so much of it is like, so clearly, Vance, you are going to go say this. Okay, I'll go say that. I probably should be a little more respectful, but you know what? I am not even matching the energy that they are bringing to us as citizens in the American people. So I'm trying to elevate myself. I'm trying to do better, but you know what? I'm mad. So I'm going to get snarky at times, and that means sassy nicknames. I probably shouldn't. I'm setting a bad example. I'm aware of the fact that I'm setting a bad example, but I'm going to do it anyway for now. Cause yeah. What am I looking for? I'm looking for my swoop so that we can get into this Hegseth problem. Speech, and then we'll go from there. And I hit the wrong button. Of course I hit the wrong button. Why would I hit the right button? All right. So we're going to do our thing and we're going to take a look at this Hegseth press conference. If I can find it, there it is. Yeah, we're going to take a look at this Hegseth press conference. It is not too long. I might try and speed them up. Do I have captions on? There we go. Now I have captions on. And I will be stopping and starting. And I'm going to stop probably pretty quickly in the front end because I don't know what that means, Dad. Sorry, got distracted. Got distracted in chat for a second. No, so we are gonna pull this up. The very first thing I'm going to point out, though, is this is the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense should know the flag code of conduct for this American flag code of conduct. He's breaking it. And it's like the weird ask in a writer for a musician or a comic so that you know that the venue has read the contract. And for me, my weird ask of somebody like the Secretary of Defense, I know it's insane, but it's there, is to follow the flag code of conduct, because these are the first people to yell at, say, Colin Kaepernick for kneeling, and he's wearing a flag pocket square, which is against the flag code of conduct. So it's a little thing, but that's what we're going with. All right, Petey. I am very disrespectful. I am sorry. Secretary Hegseth, what do you have to say?
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with the U.S. press. We're going to take 2 from the U.S. We'll take 2 from international, and then we'll go from there depending on the secretary. So
see the pocket square.
Oh, hold on, John. Sir.
I'll make me smaller.
It is great to be here at NATO with 31 allies. Also,
hold on, guys. I got to try and figure out what is up with the volume here, because that is very... Let me know, chat, if that volume is good for you or not, because on my end, it is crazy quiet.
Also, with my wife, Jenny, who's been meeting with families of U.S. troops, both here in Germany, and we're heading to Poland right after this as well. That's what this is all about for me, for President Trump, and the Defense Department. I also want to express a special thanks to the Secretary General.
That better, chat.
For your boldness, for your friendship.
All right, Mama says it's too low. We're going to try something here, guys.
For your leadership, and most especially for your urgency of the matter at hand, which is great to see from the leader of NATO. Look forward to working very closely with him and his team.
I'm working on it.
And before we're talking about what we've done at the ministerial, I want to reaffirm a few things.
A little bit better, guys.
First, as we see it, NATO's strategic objectives are to prevent great power conflict in Europe, deter nuclear and non-nuclear aggression, and defeat threats to treaty allies should deterrence fail. Second, the U.S. is committed to building a stronger, more lethal NATO. However, we must ensure that European and Canadian commitment to Article 3 of this treaty is just as strong. Article 3 says that allies, and I quote, by means of continuous and effective self-help and mutual aid, will maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. Leaders of our European allies should take primary responsibility for defense of the continent, which means security ownership by all allies, guided by a clear understanding of strategic realities, and it's an imperative given the strategic realities that we face. And that begins with increasing defense spending. 2% is a start, as President Trump has said, but it's not enough. Nor is 3%, nor is 4%, more like 5%. Real investment, real urgency. We can talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches.
I'm going to pause and say that Well, you can't shoot any of those things, but you know what? That's generally what brings us to peacetime in my limited experience and understanding, is that values are what keep us going.
There is no replacement for hard power. As much as we may not want to like the world we live in some cases, there's nothing like hard.
All right. There's nothing like hard power. All right, hang on. Streaming is dynamic. I'm going to see if I can find a different feed because this apparently is very low. So give me a minute, guys. Let me see if I can find a different feed that is maybe a little bit better. No, that's not what I want. Sorry, guys. The feed was working fine earlier, and then it was not. So let me see if this feed is any better. Give me just a minute. Chat amongst yourselves. Chat amongst yourselves. Let me see here. I think I might have found a feed that is better. Let me get to the right time. Ish. And give me a minute. Let's try this again. Let's see if this one is any better. Make that bigger. There we go. Let's try this. All right. Sorry, guys. I am so sorry. Let's try it.
Our borders and our security. We are doing this by reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding our...
Oh, I got to back you up a little bit, Pete. Hang on. That's better on my end. How are we doing for you guys, chat? Is that better for you? I'm backing it up. I think it is.
President Trump gave part Defense Secretary John Healey for hosting this Ukraine Defense Contact Group and for his leadership on support of Ukraine. President Trump gave me a clear mission: achieve peace through strength, as well as put America first, our people, our taxpayers, our borders, and our security. We are doing this by reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence. NATO should pursue these goals as well.
I worry about what he thinks establishing deterrence is, because I'm guessing it's not in line with what I would see. Guessing.
NATO is a great alliance, the most successful defense alliance in history. But to endure for the future, our partners must do far more for Europe's defense. We must make NATO great again.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
It begins with defense spending, but must also include reviving the transatlantic defense industrial base, rapidly fielding emerging technologies, prioritizing readiness and lethality, and establishing real deterrence. Final.
Readiness and lethality. I worry about these words because, well, it's, given who's saying them, I think I'm right to be cautious.
I'm going to close with this. After World War II, first General and then President Eisenhower was one of NATO's strongest supporters. He believed in a strong relationship with Europe. However, by the end of Eisenhower's presidency, even he was concerned that Europe was not shouldering enough of its own defense.
Quick question. Dad, in the chat, or chat in general, my understanding is that wasn't Eisenhower concerned about the industrial military complex at the end of things? That was my memory, but I might be mixing him up with somebody else, which is very, very possible.
Nearly making, in Eisenhower's words, quote, a sucker out of Uncle Sam. Well, like President Eisenhower, this administration believes in alliances, deeply believes in alliances. But make no mistake,
thank you, Dad.
President Trump will not allow anyone to turn Uncle Sam into Uncle Sucker. Thank you, and we're glad to take some questions.
Thanks very much. Let's.
Uncle Sam into Uncle Sucker? Really? That's the best line you could have come up with? Really? It's a terrible line. I mean, not only do I not agree with it, but it's also just a bad line. Get better writers.
Start with the U.S. traveling TV pool with Liz for them.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. You have focused on what Ukraine is
Yeah.
giving up. What concessions will Putin be asked to make?
Excellent question.
Well, I would start by saying the arguments that have been made that somehow coming to the table right now is making concessions to Vladimir Putin outright that we otherwise, or that the president of the United States shouldn't otherwise make. I just reject that at its face.
Chat, I've now listened to this like 3-4 times. Did that make sense to you, or does that sound like tap dancing with words to try and come up with a lie? Because that's what it sounded like, or to avoid saying we didn't ask him for any.
There's a reason why negotiations are happening right now, just a few weeks after President Trump was sworn in as President of the United States. Vladimir Putin responds to strength.
Does
in
he,
2014,
though?
he invaded Crimea, not during the presidency of Donald Trump. Over 4 years, there was no Russian aggression from 2016 to 2020. In 2022, Vladimir Putin took aggression on Ukraine. Once again, not while President Trump was president of the United States. So any suggestion that President Trump is doing anything other than negotiating from a position of strength is on its face ahistorical and false. So when you look at what he may have to give or take, what's in or what's out in those negotiations, we have the perfect deal maker at the table from a position of strength to deal with both Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. No one's going to get everything that they want. Understanding who committed the aggression in the first place.
First of all, it says a lot to me that you say Vladimir Putin and just Zelensky. I'm here for just last names. I'm here for that. But that says a lot. The other thing is, yeah, Russia started it. So, and didn't Trump call and, yeah, okay, yeah, yes. and, wait, not, you're going to have to be a little more specific, Dad, because now I lost that thread. Yeah, I'll let him continue, but this sounds like a lot of tap dancing to say we're not going to make Russia back off so much, and we're going to put this all on Ukraine.
But I
I'll let him
challenge
keep talking.
anyone else to think of a world leader at this moment who, with credibility and strength, could bring those two leaders to the table.
Thank you.
And forge a durable peace that ultimately serves the interests of Ukraine, stops the killing and the death, which Trump has been clear he wants to do, and hopefully ultimately is guaranteed by strength of Europeans who are there prepared to back it up.
Why not invoke Article 5 then for the NATO peacekeeping forces that could potentially be deployed. Like, how does that deter President Putin?
Well, I would say, I want to be clear about something as it pertains to NATO membership not being realistic outcome for negotiations. That's something that was stated as part of my remarks here, as part of a coordination with how we're executing these ongoing negotiations, which are led by President Trump. All of that said, these negotiations are led by President Trump. Everything is on the table in his conversations with Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. What he decides to allow or not allow is at the purview of the leader of the free world, of President Trump. So I'm not going to stand at this podium and declare what President Trump will do or won't do, what will be in or what will be out.
Right, because you are at least smart enough to know that if you say one thing, he might turn around and do the exact opposite.
What concessions will be made or what concessions are not made. I can look, as our team has, of what's realistic, likely on an outcome. I think realism is an important part of the conversation that hasn't existed enough inside conversations amongst friends. But simply pointing out realism, like the borders won't be rolled back to what everybody would like them to be in 2014.
That's a choice, sir.
Is not a concession to Vladimir Putin. It's a recognition of the hard power realities on the ground after a lot of investment and sacrifice, first by the Ukrainians and then by allies.
Yes.
And then a realization that a negotiated peace
Phil.
is going to be some sort of demarcation that neither.
Shush. Stop with your propaganda for a minute. Shush. Yes, I've got Joseph Carrick. I'm not going to say that name right. Joseph Carrico's style of corruption fits Director Patel's description perfectly. High-ranking government officials use national security to hide crimes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to let him tap dance around a little bit to not say we're chatting with Putin to find out what we all want and leaving Ukraine out of the conversation. I'm paraphrasing. That's probably not exactly accurate.
Neither side wants. But it's not my job as the Secretary of Defense to define the parameters of the President of the United States as he leads some of the most complex and consequential negotiations in the world.
But when it comes to what we are doing as far as the United States military, according to a very quick Google search, sir, that is quite literally your job.
And with the U.S. press, let us go with Axios' Zach Basu, right in the far right.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Given the position you've now staked out, what leverage exactly is Ukraine being left with, especially if the U.S. also plans to wind down its military aid? And then quickly,
excellent question.
If a NATO ally is attacked by Russia or any country, will the U.S. unequivocally uphold its obligations under Article 5, regardless of that country's?
Well, we've said we're committed to the alliance, and that's part of the alliance, right? You point out Article 5, you point out Article 3. It's just
I don't think you know what those are.
I'm not saying it's cheap coming from you.
Yes, you
it's
are.
just a cheap political point to say, oh, we've left all the negotiating cards off the table by recognizing some realities that exist on the ground. President Zelensky understands the realities on the ground. President Putin understands the realities on the ground. And President Trump, as a deal maker, as a negotiator, understands those dynamics as well.
No, he doesn't.
By no means is anything that I state here, even though we lead the most powerful military in the world, hemming in the commander-in-chief in his negotiations to ultimately decide where it goes or does not go. Oh, he's got all the cards he would like. And the interesting part is oftentimes while the conventional status quo mindset or the legacy media wants to play checkers, the same checkers game we've been playing for decades, President Trump, time and time again, finds a way to play chess.
When you say President Trump and I say President Trump, are we thinking of the same human being, Hegseth? Because I don't think we're talking about the same person. Trump is not a chess player. He's just not a chess player. He wouldn't be good at it. He's not the Trump is more like a pigeon, or no, Trump is that random Central Park raven that's going to come down, move a couple of pieces in what they think is an intelligent game, and then they're going to crap all over the board, shove all the pieces to the ground, and fly away. That is, I think, how President Trump plays chess. I don't even think he could play checkers very well. So I don't know. Sir, I don't think we're talking
As a
about
deal
the same
maker,
person.
as a businessman who understands how to create realities and opportunities where they otherwise may not exist. Take, for example, the conversations that our Treasury Secretary had in Kiev recently with President Zelensky, which will continue in Munich with our Vice President and Secretary of State around investments and resources inside Ukraine. I don't want to get ahead of any decision or announcement that could be made there. It could be any number of parameters. But President Trump, as a deal maker and a businessman, recognizes that a investment relationship with Ukraine, ultimately in the long term for the United States, is a lot more tangible than any promises or shared values we might have, even though we have them. There is something to relationships and deals in real ways, whether militarily or economically or diplomatically, that he sees that are possibilities that could forge together a lot of opportunities to show that solidarity that Vladimir Putin will clearly recognize.
I'm going to translate that word salad, as I understand it, into something that we all might understand a little bit better than whatever that was. We know that Trump wants the minerals from that Ukraine has. I'm blanking on the specific word at the moment, but we want that. Ukraine requires weapons and backing to keep defending their borders. So the what he is discussing here, I'm pretty sure, is hey, Ukraine, you give us this stuff and then we'll keep taking care of you because it's transactional, because that is what these boys seem to understand. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he can count anymore either. No, he wants Ukraine as the 53rd state. I mean, kinda. And yes, it's been rejecting objective reality. I like facts. This is a good reminder that facts are friends over here. We like facts. Facts are friends. Facts are not friends, apparently, in Hegseth land. Okay, we've just a little longer.
That's
We can do
one
it.
of any number of other opportunities that this president will leverage in these high stakes negotiations. So I just reject on its face the premise that somehow President Trump isn't dealing with a full set of cards when he's the one that can determine ultimately.
I can't help but laughing, given all the stuff that goes around about Trump's possible cognitive decline. I mean, I'm not sure he has a full set of cards. I'm just
Cards he
saying.
holds.
Great. Now shifting to the international press, we'll take the French wire service Agence France Presse with Max Delaney.
Thank you very much. Secretary of Defense, you've spoken about trying to force both Putin and Zelensky to the table. Can you give a guarantee that no deal will be forced on Ukraine that they do not want to accept, and also that you will include Europe in the negotiations about an issue that concerns European security? And can you tell us whether the US will continue to supply arms to Ukraine during any negotiations?
Well, to the first part of your question, that's not ultimately my decision. President will lead these negotiations alongside our Secretary of State, our National Security Advisor, and numerous other officials that will be involved. And ultimately, we've played our role in talking to our NATO allies about what that would look like. President Trump, I want to point out, I've got the truths right here that he posted, called both, in case we missed it, Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky. Called them both. Any negotiation that's had will be had with both. I also am very encouraged by what the Secretary General has said here. Clearly attuned to the realities of the moment, the need for peace, and that the NATO alliance and European members will play a role in that. Ultimately, President Trump speaking to those two countries is central to the deal being made, but it affects a lot of people, of course. So I'm not going to be involved in those intimate diplomatic negotiations. That's for the pros atop the Trump administration who do diplomacy and negotiations. Ultimately, as security assistance, we have continued to provide what has been allocated. I think it would be fair to say that things like future funding, either less or more, could be on the table in negotiations as well. Whatever the president determines is the most robust carrot or stick on either side to induce a durable peace, understanding, obviously, the motivations that Vladimir Putin has had on Ukraine for quite some time. Thank you.
We'll have a second international press outlet. We'll go with the German paper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung with Dr. Thomas Kuschka.
Thanks a lot, Thomas Kuschka, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Good afternoon. Mr. Secretary, two questions, please. The first one regarding the new defense investment pledge. When you and President Trump speak about raising it to 5%, do you mean European allies only, or do you mean the US as well, which is currently at 3.4% according?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. I can't figure that out. I have no idea what he meant by that. I think that's what he meant by that, but I have no idea. I have no idea. And I always worry with these guys and these like 4-part questions because,
to NATO statistics.
Not all of us can do
if the
that.
latter is true, when do you think the US could possibly reach the goal of spending 5% on defense? That's number one. Number two.
I'm going to back that up because I talked over his question.
The
And
defense investment pledge. When you and President Trump speak about raising it to 5%, do you mean European allies only, or do you mean the US as well, which is currently at 3.4% according to NATO statistics? And if the latter is true, when do you think the US could possibly reach the goal of spending 5% on defense? That's number one. Number two, you've said yesterday that Europeans need to take ownership of their own conventional security. So should Europeans expect that ultimately the US would withdraw the bulk of their forces from Europe and just leave in place what is necessary for nuclear deterrence? I know there's a revision going on. I don't expect you to name any numbers, but maybe give us an outlook of what we should expect. Thank you.
Thank you. I think nobody can or should contest the extent of America's willingness to invest in national security. We have a budget of $850 billion spent on defense. I'm in the business of ensuring that every dollar of that is used wisely, which is why we're pushing a Pentagon audit and making sure that we're cutting fat so that we've got more at the tip of the spear. 3.4% is a very robust investment, larger than most of our allies within NATO. Any defense minister or secretary of defense that tells you they wouldn't want more would be lying to you. I understand that. Ultimately, we have our own budgetary considerations to be had, but I don't think an unwillingness of NATO allies to invest in their own defense spending can be dismissed away by trying to point at the $900 billion that America has invested around the globe to include the NATO alliance and saying that.
Sir, that is a fair question. If you're going to walk in there and be like, you need to put down this, and we're already spending more. And what you're asking people to spend even, I understand math is hard, but I think you need to look at your math again.
That's not enough. So ultimately, we are very much committed to the NATO alliance and to our allies.
You say
But
that
without burden sharing, without creating the right set of incentives for European countries to invest, then we would be forced to attempt to be everywhere for everybody all the time, which in a world of fiscal restraints is, again, to get back to that word reality, just not reality.
this is an excellent time for Princess Bride quote. You keep saying that word, reality. I do not think it means what you think it means.
So yes, we will continue to spend robustly. Our expectation of our friends, and we say this in solidarity, is you have to spend more on your defense, for your country, on that continent, understanding that the American military and the American people stand beside you as we have in NATO, but can't have the expectation of being the permanent guarantor, as I alluded to, from what even Eisenhower observed post World War II. That shift has to happen. The peace dividend has to end. There are autocrats with ambitions around the globe, from Russia to the communist Chinese. Either the West awakens
Us?
to that reality and creates combat multipliers with their allies and partners, to include NATO, or we will abdicate that responsibility to somebody else with all the wrong values. You mentioned Europe. We have not said in any way that we're abandoning our allies in Europe. There have been no decisions based on troop levels. Again, that's a discussion to be had by the commander-in-chief in these high-stakes negotiations. And that would most likely come later on. But there is a recognition that the ambitions of the communist Chinese are a threat to free people everywhere, to include America's interests in the Pacific. And it makes a lot of sense, just in a common sense way.
Another phrase that no. Stop using words you don't actually understand.
To use our comparative advantages. European countries spending here in defense of this continent, in defense of allies here, against an aggressor on this continent with ambitions. That strikes me as the right place to invest. And I don't say that in a condescending way. I say that in a common sense, practical way.
It's
Investing
kind of
in
condescending.
defense on the continent makes sense. We support that as well. It also makes sense comparatively and geographically for the United States, along with allies in the Pacific, like Japan and South Korea and the Philippines and Australia and others, to also invest in allies and partners and capabilities in the Pacific to project power there in service of deterrence. That deterrent effect in the Pacific is one that really can only be led by the United States. We wish we could lead everywhere at all times.
Huh?
We will stand in solidarity with allies and partners and encourage everyone to invest in order to have force multiplication of what we represent, but it requires realistic conversations. Those with disingenuous motives in the media, I don't mean to look at you, just saying anyone
Yeah, you do.
that suggests its abandonment are trying to drive a wedge between allies that does not exist.
I'm pretty sure that the wedge between allies that is happening, I'm pretty sure that what we're talking about is the President of the United States talked about making Canada the 51st state. It's trying to buy Greenland. I mean, these are wedges that you did it yourself. It's not a media problem. In this case, it's not a media problem.
We are committed to that NATO alliance. We understand the importance of that partnership, but it can't endure on the status quo forever in light of the threats we face and fiscal realities. Europe has to spend more. NATO has to spend more, has to invest more. And we're very encouraged by what the Secretary General has said. And frankly, by behind closed doors, what a lot of our allies have said as well, acknowledging that reality. And that's why when I say make NATO great again, it's what President Trump set out to do in 2017. The press said President Trump is abandoning NATO. He's turning
Isn't
his
that what
back on our
Trump
NATO
said?
allies. That's what the headlines read in 2017 and 2018. What actually happened? That tough conversation created even more investment to the point where now almost every NATO country is meeting the 2% goal that was said to be egregious when he first said it.
There was a whole lot of other things that went down, and that has led to I feel like we're not giving. I feel like that's not credit he needs.
Now European countries are
Or
stepping
does it?
up, and President Trump continues to ring the alarm bell that even more investment is required considering where we are.
What? I think he just wants more, because that's the only language he understands.
So suggestions of abandonment otherwise continue to be disingenuous, and we are proud to be part of this alliance and stand by it.
Sir,
I'll take a couple more. Sure.
Why don't we take one from a U.S. outlet and one from an international outlet? With the U.S. outlet, pardon me, sir, what we're going to take from the U.S. is Logan Rattick from Newsmax, please.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about expanding the defense industrial base and also expediting foreign military sales. Can you expand on that a little bit and how important that is to NATO?
Well, one of the self-evident conclusions of the war in Ukraine was the underinvestment that both the European continent and America has had, unfortunately, in the defense industrial base. The ability to produce munitions, emerging technologies, rapidly and field them was a blind spot exposed through the aggression against Ukraine. Ukraine has responded to that, as we've had a chance to listen to a great deal. Europe is responding to that, and so is America. We have to do more to ensure, whether you call it the arsenal for democracy or defending the free world, if America can't build and export.
That's just throwing things out there to test run a slogan, and I find that really gross.
And build and provide rapid capabilities because we're too stale or static or bureaucratic or the Pentagon is bloated, then we're not able to field the systems we need in the future. So deep and dramatic reforms are coming at the Defense Department with the leadership of President Trump to ensure that we're investing robustly in our defense industrial base. A great example is shipbuilding. We need to vastly increase our ability to build ships and submarines, not just for ourselves, but to honor obligations to our allies as well. And we will do that. Foreign military sales is another thing I mentioned this morning with the Secretary General. We have, for a long time, been the country by, with, and through that our allies are able to supply major platforms and weapon systems like the F-35 and the Patriots and others. Whatever the system is, we need to reform that process so it's quicker. So
Elon Musk really does want to be Tony Stark, but not Iron Man Tony Stark, before Iron Man Tony Stark. Good to know.
Request today isn't delivered 7 years from now, but 3 years from now with less red tape and with the most efficient and effective technology possible. We hear that from our allies, and that's part of being a good faith partner, is we're going to invest in our defense industrial base. We're going to make sure foreign military sales are as rapid as possible, which again is a force multiplier for American power, which is something we want to do in a contested world.
It means people over here make a lot of money.
National outlet, the Japanese service NHK, with Tsuchiyo Sugita, please.
Sachio from NHK, the Japanese TV station. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about China. As you mentioned that U.S. will be prioritizing in deterring China. What role will you be expecting with Japan and IP4 countries to play in this context?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I would point out that President Trump has expressed a strong relationship with Xi Jinping. We don't have an inevitable desire to clash with China. There's a recognition that there are divergent interests which lead to a need for strength on the American side to ensure our interests are advanced and that ultimately any aggression is deterred. That's a real thing, but
what
we don't
do
feel
you
like
mean by
conflict is
strength?
inevitable and certainly don't seek conflict with China. And that's why President Trump has that good relationship with Xi Jinping. But it was prudent for us to work with allies and partners in the Pacific to ensure that that deterrence, hard power deterrence, not just reputational, but reality exists. And that's why a lot of my first phone calls as Secretary of Defense were to Pacific allies, to Australia, to Japan, to South Korea, to the Philippines, and others, and will continue, because that, just as this alliance in Europe is critical, working by, with, and through allies and partners in that region who understand the reality of the ascendant Chinese threat will be critical. It can't be America alone. It won't be America alone if we are to deter that. So it is a focus. I've articulated that from day one. America achieves strength, whether it's in peace through the Ukrainian conflict or deterring it in the Pacific through strength.
What does that mean, sir? I feel like that means it deters it when you have lots of guns, and that's just not correct.
There's a reason why Donald Trump emphasizes peace through strength at every moment. My job alone as the Secretary of Defense is to ensure he has the strongest, most capable, most lethal military possible. Heaven forbid we have to use it. It's meant and built for deterrence. But if we have to, we can close with and destroy our enemies and bring our men and women home with success as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Oh, no. Dynamic. Streaming is dynamic. I'm still here. I was trying to get myself to the right spot. Okay. Take a minute. We're all going to take a minute. We're going to be like our dogs or Taylor Swift, and we're going to shake that off because that was okay. Hegseth, sir, soft power is really powerful. I know the current administration bromance that is going on doesn't actually understand that. But it's real and needs to be kept up. So, and this is why I went with Hegseth and not with JD Vance, because Vance also said a lot of stuff that was dumb. Sorry, it just was and required way too much fact checking. He needed fact checking, but also, Hegseth makes better content. There it is. Yes, deterrent is being used as code talk about spending much more on nukes. Maybe don't fire the people who are taking care of what we already have. Just a thought. And then not be able to find them because you fired them too fast. I don't like this timeline, but this is why we gather here together. And this is why we chat, and this is why we go through some of this together, because we need to go through some of this together, because we need to giggle, we need to chat, we need to find the funny in some of the things, we need to focus, because remember when Steve Bannon told us a few years ago that the whole fire hose of news thing, so that the media would just latch on to a couple things, and then we couldn't follow the traces of things that were actually important? Well, they're doing that. I keep meaning to at some point get to a history lesson where we can dive into the background of Stephen Miller, who is, terrifying, or a history lesson as to how us doing all of these things is truly fundamentally American, and I would like to change that, and we should do better. But then, I get on Threads, and I see that Scotland is mad at this Trump and this administration, and I go, well, pissing off the Quebecois and the Scots in 1 week, that takes some talent. And then we wind up here. So as usual, if you, you know what? I need to swoop. Before I go too long, I need to swoop so that at some point I can timestamp and catch up with everything. So I don't know what everything is going to bring. I am going to warn everybody, I want to be here Tuesday evening. Tuesday is going to be a really big day for me on the personal level. So I have absolutely no idea if I'm going to get a show out or not. Stay tuned. The down here, that's me on all the socials, the BlueSky and stuff like that, which is also in the description. That is where I post first for prep for shows and stuff to let everybody know I'm doing something. So stay tuned. I want to be here Tuesday because heavens, there was a press conference where Trump and Musk today were apparently, I don't know, explaining that Trump is really the president. I'm sure I'm vastly oversimplifying it, but maybe not by as much as I am hoping. I don't know. Anyway, we'll find the things. We're going to find the funny. Maybe on Tuesday or Thursday, we just take a little time off and we do a dive into this Duolingo drama or something like that. Anyway, let me know online in the comments what sort of things pop up, because it is a fire hose and I do try to bring a bit of focus. So, yeah, if you want my take on something, if you're like, oh no, all of us politics nerds need to get together and watch this together, drop me a link, let me know, reach out, and we will take a look at it, and it helps me. Oh, did I mention do all the YouTubey things? I don't know. If I didn't, tell the algorithm that you want to be notified when I do go live. Or, do all those things. Share with your friends if you think this is helpful in any way, because you know what? We're going to build a community. And yes, I might name call more than I want. But the thing is, we're the community of snowflakes, and at some point we're going to be like the weather outside in Maine, and cause some traffic for dudes like Hegseth who can't read some of the things he needs to be able to read. And yes, so hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday. Sorry, my brain did the squirrely thing. I'll work on a bumper for that at some point. I hope everybody is good. I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Hopefully I'll see you Tuesday. If not Tuesday, the plan is for Thursday. Stay tuned. This week is going to be a little wild and wacky. And with that, I am going to say goodnight and go find myself some food. And just remember, be well, do good, and bark a lot. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Unfiltered Tea. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you have a story you want our unfiltered take on, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we will see you next time.